There is something quietly unsettling about a person who sees more than they speak. The world cannot decide if it should admire you or fear you, because you carry a depth that cannot be catalogued or predicted. People sense it in your silence, in the way your eyes hold stories they cannot read, in the way you stand calmly while others scramble for validation. They don't fear your words. They fear the knowledge behind them. They fear the calm that comes from understanding life at a level they haven't yet touched. Many around you think wisdom announces itself loudly, but yours does the opposite. It hides in restraint. It hides in the pauses you choose, in the moments where you say nothing because truth does not always require explanation. You know more than you let on, and that terrifies people who survive on noise. There's almost a divine mystery in the way you move, quietly, steadily, without needing applause or recognition, and that mystery unsettles those who have built their identities on being seen, praised, or validated by others. People are scared of you not because of what you show, but because of what you never reveal. They can feel that you carry knowledge that doesn't come from books or theories, but from experience, reflection, and a kind of inner awakening most people avoid because it demands honesty. You have walked through storms that taught you more than any conversation ever could. You have seen people's true intentions, and once you learned what hides behind their masks, you stopped needing to explain yourself. That alone makes others uneasy. There is a certain kind of strength that grows in silence, a certain clarity that forms when the world stops distracting you. You've learned to sit with pain until it confessed its lessons. You've learned to observe human nature without expecting it to behave differently. And because of this, you navigate life with a certainty that others misinterpret as arrogance. It isn't arrogance. It's awareness. And awareness is frightening to those who live comfortably in illusions. You know when someone is lying long before they finish their sentence. You can feel manipulation wrapped in kindness. You can sense when someone's praise is a disguise for envy. You notice the small shifts, the flicker in their eyes, the change in their tone, the restlessness in their spirit when your presence forces them to confront themselves. This is why people act strange around you. They know you see too much. There are people who rely on deception to maintain their sense of control. But how can they control someone who cannot be fooled? They avoid you, not because you've wronged them, but because your perception makes them feel exposed. You don't need to speak the truth for them to feel it. Your silence is enough. Your stillness is enough. Your understanding is enough. You've become the kind of person whose very presence disrupts the comfort of lies. You have carried knowledge that others would crumble under. You have learnt truths that cost you pieces of yourself. And yet, you walk with grace. You speak carefully. You choose your battles wisely. You do not reveal everything you know because wisdom taught you that not every truth needs an audience. You've become the kind of soul that people can neither define nor dismiss. People are scared of you because they cannot predict you. They cannot manipulate you. They cannot impress you with shallow achievements or hollow confidence. They cannot influence you with the same tricks they use on others. You see through the smoke and mirrors, and they know it. You know more than you let on, not because you wish to hide, but because you understand that revelation is a sacred act. You reveal yourself only to those who carry sincerity in their hearts. You open your mind only to those who approach with humility, and you guard your soul from those who come with masks instead of honesty. The world fears what it cannot understand, and you, with your quiet strength and unshakable discernment, are a mystery too deep for shallow minds to grasp. That is why people are scared of you. Not because you are dangerous, but because you are aware. Not because you are loud, but because you are enlightened. And the truth is, some people would rather fear you then grow to meet you. There is a certain power in silence that most people never learn to understand. Many assume that the quiet ones are weak, unsure, or lacking in authority, but your silence is not the silence of confusion. It is the silence of self-mastery. It is the silence of someone who has learned that strength does not always need to announce itself. You carry a presence that unsettles people because they cannot figure out how someone so calm can carry such depth. Your silence has become your shield, your armor, and your most dangerous truth. People fear what they cannot measure. A loud person is easy to understand because noise always reveals insecurity, but a silent person, someone who watches, absorbs, and responds with intention, becomes a mystery, and mysteries frighten those who depend on predictability. When you walk into a room quietly, people feel something shift, though they cannot explain what it is. They sense that you see more than you are letting on, that you carry an inner world they cannot enter, and that your quietness is not emptiness but fullness, held in restraint. Your silence reveals your strength in ways that words never could. It shows that you do not need validation or approval to feel grounded. It shows that you are not moved by the chaos around you. It shows that you have learned to control your impulses and speak only when your words hold purpose. People who constantly seek attention cannot understand this kind of restraint. They are threatened by the idea of someone who does not need to be heard to make an impact. They are frightened by someone whose calmness carries more authority than their noise. Silence becomes powerful when it is backed by understanding. You have observed things others ignore. You have learned to read between the lines, to listen to what is not being said, to notice the tone beneath the tone. This kind of awareness comes only from those who are willing to sit in their thoughts without being afraid of them. While others rush to fill every empty space with noise, you let silence guide you. You let silence teach you. You let silence sharpen your intuition. This is why people fear you, because they know you are not easily fooled or distracted. They know you are not reacting blindly like they are. You are thinking, discerning, processing. Silence is not passive. Silence is active. It is a choice. And when you choose silence, you are choosing maturity over impulse. You are choosing wisdom over chaos. You are choosing clarity over confusion. People do not understand how someone can be so composed, so patient, so observant. They confuse your silence with softness, not realizing that it holds more force than their loudest declarations. They fear the silence they cannot interpret. They fear the stillness that exposes their noise. They fear the calm that reveals their inner storms. Your silence also reveals a strength that is rare, the strength of self-control. In a world where people react instantly, emotionally, and without thought, you do not. You have learnt to pause before responding, to breathe before speaking, to reflect before engaging. This patience makes people uneasy because they cannot manipulate someone who does not react on command. They cannot provoke someone who refuses to be dragged into emotional chaos. Your silence is not empty, it is discipline. People become intimidated when they realize you cannot be moved by their noise. They shout, demand, complain, or provoke, hoping to shake you, but your silence remains. It stands firm like a mountain, unmoved, unbothered, undisturbed. That stability terrifies them, because it reveals their own instability. They recognize that you do not bend or break easily. They recognize that your silence comes from a place of inner strength they do not possess. You are not quiet because you have nothing to say. You are quiet because you do not waste your energy on things that do not matter. You speak when it is necessary. You act when it is purposeful. You withdraw when it is wise. This level of discernment makes people feel exposed in your presence. They know you see through them. They know they cannot distract you with noise. They know they cannot impress you with exaggeration or overwhelm you with loudness. Your silence is your strength because it keeps you in control while others lose themselves in reaction. It keeps you grounded while others chase attention. It keeps you wise while others drown in their own noise. And that is why people fear you, because your silence speaks a truth they cannot ignore. Your silence reveals a strength they wish they had. There is something profoundly unsettling about a person who sees deeper than others are comfortable with. Most people live their lives on the surface, content with appearances, illusions, and carefully curated masks. But you are different. You observe with more than your eyes. You listen with more than your ears. You understand with more than your mind. And this creates a tension in the room whenever you enter it, because the people around you can sense that their usual disguises do not work on you. You see through things too quickly, too effortlessly, too clearly. People often mistake perception for suspicion, but what you carry is far beyond suspicion. It is insight, it is clarity. It is the ability to look at someone's words and feel the intention behind them. You catch the subtle shifts, the hesitation before a lie, the strange brightness in false praise, the sudden coldness in unexpected silence. You notice the patterns in their behavior long before they become obvious. And because you see these things so naturally, people feel exposed in your presence, even when you have not said a single word. Your depth is not something you force. It is not a performance. It is the result of everything you have endured. Pain sharpened your vision. Loneliness deepened your reflection. Betrayal taught you to look past appearances. Disappointment pushed you to study the heart, not the smile. You learned quickly that people often say one thing and feel another, and because you learned it the hard way, you now recognize the signs without needing explanation. Those who depend on deception or emotional games feel especially threatened by someone like you. They are used to manipulating the unaware, but you are not unaware. You understand their intentions before they have fully formed them. You feel when something is off. You sense when someone is pretending. You know when a person's actions do not match their words. And this terrifies them because they cannot hide from someone who sees beyond the surface. People fear the kind of person who can look at them and understand what they hoped to keep hidden. They become defensive. They become distant. They become uneasy without knowing why. It is not that you are judging them. It is not that you are seeking to expose them. It is simply that your awareness is too strong to be ignored. Your presence forces them to confront parts of themselves they do not want to face. They can lie to others. They can lie to themselves. But they cannot lie to you. Not convincingly, not deeply, not for long. Your ability to see deeper makes people feel unsafe, not because you are harmful, but because you are true. And truth is something many people avoid. They fear being read. They fear being understood. They fear being known. So when someone like you shows up, quiet, observant, and spiritually awake, they do not know how to behave. They either become unusually friendly or strangely hostile. That sudden shift in behavior is not about you. It is about what your presence reveals in them. Your perception is a mirror, and mirrors make people uncomfortable when they are not ready to see themselves. You reflect back their intentions, their insecurities, their doubts. You sense their inner battles even when they pretend everything is fine, and this is why people sometimes avoid your gaze. They feel that you can see right through their excuses, their motives, their stories. It is not that you claim to know everything. It is simply that your intuition leaves little room for deception. This depth often makes you stand apart. You are never meant to blend in with those who fear the truth. You are shaped to understand more, to feel more, to perceive more. And because of this, your relationships are different. You prefer sincerity over noise, honesty over flattery, and clarity over confusion. You are drawn to people who speak from their hearts, who reveal their wounds without pretending to be perfect, who carry a spiritual honesty that aligns with your own. And yet, your depth will always intimidate those who have not learned to face themselves. They will label you mysterious, intense, too observant, too quiet, too understanding. But what they are truly saying is that you make them aware of their own shadows. You make them conscious of what they hide. You make them feel seen in a way that strips away their illusions. You see deeper than others are comfortable with, because you have lived deeper than others have dared to go. And this depth, this awareness, this spiritual clarity, this is what makes people fear you, even when you say nothing at all. There is a vast difference between knowledge that is memorized and knowledge that is lived, and you live your wisdom. People often confuse opinions with understanding, but you have learnt that true insight comes from experience, especially the kind that wounds, reshapes, and matures the soul. This is why your presence carries a depth that others cannot imitate. They sense that you did not read your wisdom from a page. You earned it, often through heartbreak, silence, and seasons of waiting. And that makes people uneasy, because lived wisdom cannot be challenged or dismissed the way empty talk can. You did not become who you are by avoiding pain. You became who you are by walking through it, studying it, and letting it refine you. You have known what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trusted, and from that you learned to listen more carefully. You have seen people change when their masks slipped, and from that you learned to see with spiritual eyes instead of emotional hope. You have felt the sting of disappointment, the silence of abandonment, the heavy weight of standing alone, and instead of becoming bitter, you became perceptive. Instead of breaking, you became discerning. Instead of shutting down, you woke up. Experience taught you things that no lecture or book ever could. It taught you how fragile words are. It taught you that intentions matter more than expressions. It taught you that loyalty is rare, honesty is sacred, and truth is often hidden beneath layers of human confusion. You learned to feel the motives behind actions, the shadows behind smiles, and the real meaning behind the things people avoid saying. And because your wisdom was carved into you rather than handed to you, it carries a weight that others cannot match. People fear this kind of wisdom because it forces them to confront themselves. They can debate someone who merely memorizes information, but they cannot debate someone who carries truths learned through suffering. They can dismiss theories, but they cannot dismiss scars. They can challenge someone who speaks from ego, but they cannot intimidate someone who speaks from experience. When you talk, there is calmness in your voice. Not arrogance, not aggression, simply certainty. And that certainty unsettles people who live in confusion, insecurity, or denial. Your wisdom also threatens those who depend on deception. They expect to hide behind manipulation, flattery, or false charm. But you have seen enough darkness to recognize it instantly. You know the subtle signs of dishonesty because you have lived through them. You know what betrayal feels like because you have suffered it. You know how people pretend, how they twist stories, how they hide motives behind smiles. You learned all this not because you wanted to, but because life forced you to understand. And now, that understanding has become your quiet strength. When you speak, people feel the truth behind your words. They sense that your insight comes from a deeper place. They sense that you have wrestled with your own soul, questioned life, watched people, studied behavior, and survived moments that would have crushed others. They know your calm is not naive, it is earned. Your wisdom does not shout, it settles. It does not demand attention, it commands respect. This is why your presence intimidates people who prefer comfort over growth. They feel small around someone who has lived deeply. They feel exposed around someone who sees clearly. They feel threatened by someone whose wisdom cannot be manipulated or corrupted. They recognize that your insight is not theoretical. It is spiritual, emotional, and rooted in reality. And this makes them nervous, because they cannot argue with someone who understands life from the inside out. Your experience has also given you something even more powerful: compassion. You recognize pain in others because you have carried it. You understand silence because you have lived through it. You know how people hide their wounds, their fears, their insecurities. This makes your wisdom gentle, not judgmental. It makes your presence comforting to the honest and terrifying to the deceptive. People sense that you carry both softness and strength, and they don't know how to respond to someone who embodies both. Wisdom gained through experience is the kind that cannot be taken away. It cannot be argued with, it cannot be replaced, and it cannot be ignored. You know what you know because life taught you, patiently and painfully, and people fear that. They fear the depth in you because they have not developed it in themselves. They fear your insight because it reveals everything they try to hide. And they fear your wisdom because it stands firm, no matter who tries to challenge it. There is a quiet terror that rises in people when they realize they cannot deceive you. Most individuals rely on subtle manipulation, half-truths, flattery, or carefully crafted masks to move through the world. They have become so used to hiding their intentions that honesty feels foreign to them. But you are not easily misled. You see the truth beneath the performance. You sense the intention before the sentence is complete. And this ability, this inner clarity, unsettles people on a level they often do not admit, even to themselves. You have lived through enough deception to recognize its scent. You have felt the sting of betrayal from those who claimed loyalty. You have been misled by people who used your kindness against you. But every wound sharpened your perception. Every disappointment refined your intuition. Every manipulation you endured taught you to pay attention to the details that others overlook. People assume they can fool you the way they fool others, but they underestimate how deeply you have learnt to observe. You notice the small things, the hesitation before a lie, the shift in tone when someone hides an agenda, the way their eyes avoid your gaze when they are trying to distract you. You hear what is missing from their story as clearly as what is present. You see how their actions contradict their words. You feel when someone's energy betrays their intentions, and while they think they are presenting a convincing front, you quietly read between the lines. This ability is not something you brag about. It is something you carry silently, using it only to protect yourself. People who manipulate thrive on confusion and emotional reaction, but you do not react the way they expect. You do not fall into their traps. You do not take the bait. You do not feed their ego. Instead, you watch. You wait. You let them reveal themselves at their own pace, and they always do. This calm, discerning posture is what terrifies people because it strips them of the power they hoped to hold over you. Manipulation loses its grip when it meets awareness. Lies crumble when they meet someone who sees clearly. Hidden motives collapse when faced with someone who is not desperate for approval. People have grown accustomed to dealing with those who are easily swayed, emotionally reactive, or blind to subtlety. But you do not fit the mold they are used to. You cannot be steered by guilt, flattery, or pressure. You cannot be steered by guilt, flattery, or pressure. You do not give manipulators what they need most: control. Your awareness challenges the intentions of those who seek to use you. They realize quickly that the strategies they use on others will not work on you. Their charm has no effect. Their emotional traps do not catch you. Their lies do not confuse you. Their false kindness does not blind you. And when they see that they cannot manipulate you, something inside them shifts. Fear creeps in, not because you are dangerous, but because you are unpredictable to the dishonest. People who rely on deception fear anyone who can see through them. It exposes the weakness they have spent so much energy hiding. It reveals the insecurity behind their arrogance. It uncovers the emptiness behind their loud confidence. When you stand before them, quiet, observant, hard to read, they feel their own illusion cracking. They sense that they are not as clever as they believed. They realize they no longer have the upper hand. You do not confront people with their motives. You do not humiliate them with the truth. You see, you simply refuse to be fooled, and that alone is enough to unsettle them. Your presence disrupts their patterns. Your insight disarms their strategies. Your clarity prevents their chaos from affecting you. You become the one person they cannot sway, cannot trick, cannot mislead, and nothing frightens a manipulator more than losing control of the narrative. Your strength lies not in calling out deceit, but in being immune to it. You do not expose people, they expose themselves in your presence. You do not chase the truth, it reveals itself because your intuition leaves no space for anything else. People sense this, even if they cannot explain it. They feel stripped of their disguises. They feel seen in ways they did not consent to. They feel vulnerable because their usual tools are useless against someone who sees too clearly. This is why people fear you, not because you seek power, but because you cannot be controlled. Not because you speak loudly, but because you understand deeply. And understanding is the one thing deception can never survive. There is something profoundly unsettling about a person whose calmness exposes the unrest in others. You have a way of walking into a room with a quiet presence that does not demand attention but somehow commands it. Your stillness is not passive, it is powerful. It reveals a steadiness that many people do not possess within themselves. When you remain grounded in situations where others would panic, it forces them to see the chaos they carry inside, and people do not like being confronted with their own inner storms. Your calmness is not the result of naivety or lack of experience. It is the product of everything you have endured. You have faced moments that could have destroyed you. You have walked through situations that left others trembling. You have survived emotional ambushes, silent betrayals, and unexpected losses. And through all of this, you learned how to steady your soul. You learned that reacting impulsively only gives power to the wrong voices. You learned that peace is not something found outside of you, but something built within. And now that you carry this inner peace, it becomes a mirror to everyone who encounters you. You see off people's eyes and arms and the presence of your people who live in chaos become uncomfortable around someone whose very presence exposes their instability. They do not know how to behave around a person who does not respond with anger, insecurity, or panic. They expect you to be thrown off by their outbursts. They expect you to fall apart under pressure. They expect you to crave approval or react emotionally. But you do none of these things. You remain calm. You remain centered. You remain observant. And that confuses them because your calmness reveals their lack of control over themselves. Your stability disrupts the emotional games people try to play. When someone attempts to provoke you and you remain unmoved, it forces them to see that their tactics only work on those who are easily shaken. When someone acts superior or arrogant and you respond with quiet clarity instead of defensiveness, they feel their own insecurity exposed. When someone tries to create drama and you choose peace, they realize they cannot drag you into the chaos they rely on to feel powerful. Your calmness does not make them comfortable, it makes them feel powerless. People who thrive on instability are threatened by those who carry peace within them. Your calm spirit unsettles them because it means they cannot predict you. They cannot manipulate your emotions. They cannot provoke a reaction. They cannot read your silence or assume your thoughts. They become uneasy because your presence forces them to confront their own emotional imbalance. They see that the noise they create is not normal. It is a reflection of their lack of internal alignment. Your calmness is not weakness, it is strength that has been refined through suffering. It is the result of learning to remain steady when life tried to break you. It is the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs validation to feel secure. It is the deep understanding that storms come and go, but the person who learns to anchor their spirit becomes unshakable. And unshakable people are intimidating because they show others what real strength looks like. You do not silence chaos by force. You silence it by refusing to feed it. You do not outshout the noise around you. You outlast it. You do not chase people's approval. You detach from their judgments. This calm disarms those who expected to control you with fear, guilt, or confusion. They begin to fear you because you are not moved by the things that move them. You do not crumble under pressure. You do not lose your identity in conflict. You do not panic when life becomes unpredictable. Instead, you adjust, observe, and respond with clarity. People are frightened by the realization that your calmness comes from self-understanding, not from ignorance. They sense you have traveled through emotional depths they have not dared to enter. They can feel that your peace has been earned, that it comes from truth, not avoidance, and that truth is what makes them tense in your presence. You make them aware of their own restlessness simply by standing in your own stability. Your calmness exposes the noise others try to hide. It reveals the inner battles they pretend do not exist. It uncovers the fear behind their anger, the insecurity behind their arrogance, the confusion behind their confidence. And this exposure is uncomfortable. It makes people feel seen in ways they did not choose. It makes them feel vulnerable because they realize they cannot shake you, cannot rattle you, cannot break the silence you carry. And that is why your calmness is feared, not because it is threatening, but because it reveals everything they hoped to keep hidden. You do not reveal everything you know, and that alone unsettles people more than anything you could ever say out loud. There is a mystery around you that no one can quite unravel. You listen carefully, speak thoughtfully, and reveal selectively. Your restraint is not accidental. It is the result of wisdom formed through experience. You learned long ago that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Not everyone should be allowed to witness the depth of your mind or the clarity of your intuition. So you speak only when necessary, and you keep the rest safely guarded inside. This mystery is what intimidates people, because they cannot understand someone who refuses to empty themselves for approval. People expect others to explain themselves, to overshare, to prove their worth by exposing their thoughts and emotions. But you do not play by those rules. You understand the value of privacy. You understand that silence protects you more than explanations ever could. You understand that revealing too much to the wrong hearts can be dangerous, and because you hold your knowledge quietly, people fear you in a way they cannot articulate. They cannot measure you, they cannot predict you, they cannot categorize you. And human beings are frightened by what they cannot define. Your restraint feels foreign to those who are used to loudness. They expect arguments, accusations, emotional displays, or constant self-expression, but you possess a different kind of strength. The kind that does not require an audience. You do not need to display what you know to prove your intelligence. You do not need to reveal your feelings to prove your depth. You do not need to share your plans to prove your direction. This quiet confidence leaves people unsettled, because it makes them wonder what else you know. what else you have noticed, what else you have chosen not to say. People sense that behind your silence lies an ocean of awareness. They feel that your calm eyes have witnessed more than they admit. They suspect that your mind has already solved puzzles they haven't yet realized exist. They see that your restraint is not the restraint of ignorance, but the restraint of someone who could say much more if they wished to. This quiet power makes them nervous because they cannot anticipate your thoughts, cannot anticipate your reactions, and cannot anticipate how much of their true self you have already perceived. It becomes difficult for insincere or manipulative people to feel comfortable around you. They depend on others being naive, expressive, or easily read. But you are none of these things. You watch without announcing your observations. You understand without needing confirmation. You notice without interrupting. You read intentions without exposing your awareness. This hidden insight strips manipulators of the control they crave. They fear that your silence is not emptiness, but knowledge they cannot access. Your restraint also creates a kind of authority that does not need to be declared. People find themselves adjusting their behavior around you without knowing why. They speak more carefully. They explain themselves more than usual. They monitor their tone. They choose their words with caution. They cannot relax into carelessness because they sense that your silence holds more perception than their words hold meaning. You make them aware of themselves simply by withholding what you know. In your presence, people become aware of their own transparency. They fear that you have noticed things they intended to hide, insecurities, contradictions, jealousies, hidden motives. They fear that your silence has already formed conclusions they were not ready for you to reach. They fear that your calmness means you are evaluating them, not judging them, but seeing them as they truly are. And nothing frightens the human ego more than being seen without its masks. Your choice not to reveal everything you know is not manipulation. It is boundary, it is wisdom, it is spiritual maturity. You understand that some truths lose their power when spoken to the wrong audience. You understand that people who cannot handle depth do not deserve access to yours. You understand that silence is sometimes the most protective answer. This selective revelation keeps your spirit safe and your intentions concealed. It keeps your heart unexposed and your wisdom unchallenged. Others fear what they cannot decode. They fear the thoughts you keep to yourself. They fear the limits they cannot cross. They fear the depths they cannot enter. They fear the knowledge you carry silently, and they fear you, not because you threaten them, but because you know far more than you allow the world to see. People become frightened when they sense that you cannot be predicted. They are used to dealing with individuals who show their emotions openly, reveal their thoughts immediately, and respond in ways that are familiar and easy to control. But you do not operate that way. You think before you speak. You observe before you act. You watch patterns before you place trust. This makes you unreadable to those who rely on predictable behavior to maintain their sense of power. They cannot anticipate your reactions, and that unpredictability becomes a quiet threat to them. For much of your life, people may have assumed that your silence meant you were simple or easy to understand. But over time, they realize something far more unsettling. You see more than you express, and you understand more than you reveal. They cannot trace your thoughts because you do not allow your emotions to spill everywhere. They cannot assume your intentions because you do not operate with the impulsiveness they expect. And the deeper truth is that people fear anything they cannot place neatly into a category. Your unpredictability is not chaos, it is clarity. You have learned not to respond from emotion but from intention. You are not swayed by pressure or urgency. If something does not align with your spirit, you do not force it. If someone does not carry sincerity, you do not pretend to trust them. If a situation demands silence, you remain silent. This unnerves people who rely on emotional reactions to gain control over others. They cannot manipulate you because you do not respond to manipulation. They cannot provoke you because you do not rise to provocation. They cannot impress you with shallow gestures because you see beyond surface-level performance. People feel powerless around someone they cannot predict. They are not used to meeting a person whose mind moves deeper than the conversation, whose intuition interprets more than the words spoken, whose insight cuts through the layers of pretense. When they speak to you, they sense that you are hearing far more than their words. When they stand near you, they sense that you are noticing more than their posture. When they look into your eyes, they sense that you are reading more than their expression. This creates tension, not because you are confrontational, but because you are not fooled. What frightens them most is that your unpredictability does not come from confusion, it comes from discernment. You know when to withdraw, when to move forward, when to remain silent, and when to speak truth. You know when someone deserves your trust and when someone deserves only distance. You know when to protect your energy and when to open your heart. These choices seem sudden to others, but for you, they come from a place of deep understanding. You do not need to justify your decisions, and this independence makes people nervous because they cannot control what they cannot foresee. People become uneasy because your unpredictability reflects their own instability. They expect others to mirror their emotional volatility, but you do not. Instead, you remain grounded, watching with quiet intelligence as they reveal themselves. Some will try to provoke a reaction just to understand you better. Some will test your patience just to see how far they can push. Some will pretend loyalty to gain your insight. But none of these tactics work because you are not moved by games. You are moved only by truth. Your unpredictability is also tied to your spiritual and emotional depth. You do not live according to the world's expectations. You do not change yourself to please others. You do not betray your inner values for temporary approval. Your decisions come from a place of alignment, not fear. And while this makes you steady internally, it makes you unpredictable to others. They cannot guess your next move because your moves are not shaped by desperation or insecurity. They are shaped by clarity, purpose, and intuition. People fear what they cannot prepare for. They fear what they cannot understand. They fear what they cannot influence. And you embody all three. You move with a calmness that suggests you know something they don't. You speak with a thoughtfulness that suggests you see something they can't. You react with a precision that suggests you understand something they haven't yet realized. And because of this, they cannot predict you. So they fear you. You do not need to explain yourself. You do not need to justify your path. You do not need to soften your insight to make others comfortable. The truth is simple. People fear you because your unpredictability comes from a level of awareness they have not reached. And awareness, when combined with restraint, becomes the kind of power that silence alone can carry. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide whether to shrink themselves to ease the fears of others, or to stand fully in the truth of who they are. You have chosen the latter, and that choice alone separates you from the many who live their lives desperately trying to blend into places they were never meant to fit. You were shaped differently, not to intimidate, not to dominate, but to illuminate. An illumination will always unsettle those who are still hiding in the shadows of their own unexamined minds. You were never meant to speak loudly to prove your worth. Your strength was meant to be felt, not displayed. Your wisdom was crafted to be lived, not performed. Your insight was given to protect you, not isolate you. And though people may fear what they do not understand, remember this: Their fear is not your burden, it is their mirror. Your depth reflects the emptiness they have ignored. Your silence echoes the truth they have avoided. Your calmness reveals the storms they have yet to face. That discomfort belongs to them, not to you. You are not responsible for making others comfortable with the clarity you carry. You are not required to dim your perception so others can avoid confronting their own intentions. And you are not obligated to explain the inner workings of a mind shaped by endurance, honesty, and spiritual strength. The world often fears what it cannot categorize, but that fear is simply proof that you are operating at a level beyond what most are prepared for. Do not let their discomfort convince you that something is wrong with your spirit. What they call intimidation is simply authenticity. What they label as mystery is simply depth. What they interpret as aloofness is simply discernment. You are not too much. You are simply not as small as they expected you to be, and that realization forces them to confront the spaces in themselves they have avoided for years. Keep your silence where it is sacred. Keep your insight where it is safe. Keep your depth where it is appreciated. Not everyone deserves access to the knowledge you carry or the intuition you've earned through your own battles. The right people, the sincere, the honest, the spiritually awake, will recognize your depth, not as a threat, but as a blessing, and they will approach you not with fear, but with respect. The truth is simple. You know more than you let on, and that is your strength, not your curse. Let others fear it if they must. Let others misunderstand it if they choose. Your path is not shaped by their perception, your growth is not limited by their discomfort, and your purpose is not defined by their fear. Walk forward with the quiet confidence of someone who has seen life clearly and has chosen not to be shaken by the shadows of others. You were not meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to be true to yourself, to your calling, and to the wisdom that life has carved into your soul. And those who are meant to walk beside you will not fear your depth. They will feel safe in it.